really excited to bring today's guest to you. Her name is Karina Klimchuk. Karina is a doctor of integrative medicine. She's also a licensed acupuncturist, integrative physician, herbalist, owner of Kai Wellness Center. She uses various healing modalities to restore balance and harmony throughout the mind and body and facilitate the greatest expression of each soul's embodied journey toward mental, physical, and spiritual wholeness. This sounds beautiful. What do you do? I have so many questions for you. I see here already in your bio that balance is a very big thing for you. Balance in your body, integrating it with the mind and the spirit. I think this is something that's so important these days because a lot of us focus either on the body or the mind. You know, it's important to integrate it all. So I would love to get your opinion on the balance. What does it mean to you? You know, when patients come to see you, where do you see the disconnect? You know, and then maybe we can go over some practical things as well of, what do you usually recommend in certain instances? You know, this way the listeners will walk away with something they'll be able to implement in their own lives. You know, it's like almost like they had a session with you and they're like, oh, okay, this is something cool, you know. So I wanted to make it very, very practical, but also we'll expand a lot as well because I love to like just go on tangents about things. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Stas. I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome. So balance of the body, mind, and spirit. How do we achieve that?
So that's a beautiful question. It's a great place to start.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember when it was. I'm thinking back to college philosophy class back when Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. And there was this divide between the mind and the body in Western society, which didn't actually happen in Eastern society. That's why there's a lot more kind of a integrationist model when you read and experience Eastern philosophy. But in the Western world, this divide happened for various evolutionary reasons. And I think a big part of that split is responsible for some of the polarities and issues we face today in our own bodies, in our world.
Yes.
Politically speaking as well. So we are, as a human being, as far as we understand ourselves to be, all of the above. We are mind, we are body, we are spirit. And there's absolutely to me, it doesn't make any sense to fragment or to divide them up. What I've experienced in my own healing journey, when I have patients come through my door and administer treatment, the greatest response and the most effective response happens when all different parts of us are working harmoniously together. This can be kind of translated into the Western biomedical model, like when the brain and the gut work together with the heart, the spirit. Then there's a real unfolding of our highest potential, rather than just some compartmentalized or fragmented part of it. So achieving mind-body connection is as simple as closing your eyes and taking a breath. I can do this real quick. Do it with me.
Yes. Close my eyes.
And just take a breath in and exhale. So that simplicity of your brain's awareness on your body as you're taking a breath is a mind-body connection.
All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We are connected. What do you think causes the disconnection? You know, what are some of the root causes that people just, they disconnect and then they start this journey of trying to fix one thing and then the next thing? What are usually the root causes of that?
Good question. To be frank, modern lifestyle is a big culprit. As human beings, we're meant to be out in nature, barefoot, running around. But we end up slapping shoes on our feet with a rubber sole that prevent the discharge of our internal electric energy into the ground. Not like on a plug, you have a grounding cord. Yep. Us humans need that too.
Okay.
So there's a disconnect from nature. There's a disconnect from the basic elements by these four walls that we sit within,
Mm-hmm.
all these environmental toxins and pollutants
And stress.
and stress, and sitting behind a desk for 8 hours or more a day in front of a blue screen. We're not meant to have blue light in our faces at the same level of intensity for 8 or more hours a day. All these things, they trigger our nervous system to try and adapt, which is a stressful kind of reaction on the body and on the mind. It impacts the brain chemistry. It impacts our digestive health and our spirits. I don't know many people who leave an office job feeling uplifted. Usually there's
So what do you think people can, let's say, people who work in the office for 9 or 10 hours a day, what can they do to prevent this disconnect? What are like some practical things that, I know there's like a lot of, like, let's say you can have blue light blocking glasses. There's certain like biohacking tricks. There's this mats. I have a mat that I can plug into the outlet. Like there's a certain hole in the outlet, the grounding component, so you can plug in that mat and then you can put your feet on it, and then all of a sudden it creates that effect as if you are walking on the ground. So there's a lot of technological innovations that can help you, to achieve that, but also there's so many natural things as well. So let's say if maybe that's something that you practice, do you have any techniques, anything that you do in your personal life that helps you to ground and helps you to stay connected?
Sure. One of the quickest, easiest things I can think of off the top of my head is just a simple visualization. So if you can really plant your feet on the ground and feel a little bit of pressure under all 4 points of the feet, the inner and outer of the heel, and then the big toe mound, the little toe mound. And again, with eyes closed and taking deep breaths, allow the feeling of groundedness to come. Allow a feeling of your legs kind of extending into the center of the earth, even when it's shaking.
Yes, it's been shaking a lot lately.
It has. But that's at the surface, the center of the earth. The center of this planet remains stable. So having this visceral and visual and cognitive experience of feeling yourself grounded can help a lot. Simple things like getting a full spectrum light bulb instead of a fluorescent light at your desk, even if you just have it sitting there facing your face by your computer. Like you mentioned, the blue blocker glasses, they also look pretty cool, in my opinion. And just getting outside and walking. Simple meditations. There's all these meditation apps, calm.com, Headspace, just 5 minutes, every hour or two. Moving the body. We are fundamentally active. We must remain active, otherwise it leads to stagnation and things get stuck in our bodies. That's the source of all kinds of issues, pain, everything. So just getting up and moving around.
Okay.
Jumping jacks, simple, simple stuff.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is to break up this pattern of doing something consistently for a very long time, like sitting in the same chair, sitting at a desk, not really moving. You have to get up, like let's say every 30 minutes. You don't even have the attention span for 2 hours to do something. You're still distracting yourself. You're still multitasking. So might as well, in between those tasks, like get up for 5 minutes, stretch out, stretch your legs, stretch your back, do a couple of exercises, maybe go outside, get some sun. So yeah, like simple hacks like this, it will definitely keep you connected, and maybe the fight or flight status is not going to be so elevated as it normally is. I feel like it's so elevated in so many people these days.
Well, so our bodies are always adapting to different stimulation. And what's really important about, say, a good night's sleep or some quiet time out in nature is that the body gets a chance to restore and heal itself, which is what it does best. I mean, you ever have a paper cut and then next thing you know, it's gone? Magic, right? Well, that's what our body is completely and totally equipped to do, is to self-heal. And it needs a certain kind of environment to be able to do that effectively. When we keep disrupting that environment and we keep asking the body to adapt to this light, that noise, this smell, this, everything is being thrown at us. And it gets overloaded. It can get distracted. There's, too many agents at the airport watching all the different doors and all the different alarms going off. So there's no time and no real opportunity or environment for the healing to happen, for the cleanup crew to come in.
Mm-hmm. So how do we set up that perfect environment where our body can rest properly?
Well, getting out into nature and camping is one way.
Okay.
If you can do it in your home, for example, or at work, things that you mentioned, like a grounding pad. Mm-hmm. Something as simple as shutting off Wi-Fi at night.
Yes.
Giving your body some of the raw materials in the form of good nutrition.
Mm-hmm. Of
course, organic food, because it doesn't have the chemicals and pesticides that is an extra burden on your body to have to deal with. Mm-hmm. Greens, like cruciferous vegetables, preferably steamed or lightly grilled.
Okay.
There's a few reasons for that.
What are other reasons, actually, for people who are listening that might be kind of useful in terms of, well, I guess I'll preface it by saying, when you have a digestive issue and your stomach may not be able to digest the raw vegetables, so it's easier if there's steam, right?
So that's one thing.
That's the key?
Yeah, it's easier on the digestive system.
Okay.
The nutrition that's inside the vegetable is more bioavailable to us when the cell wall has been broken down by a light cooking process. So not heavy cooking, which actually starts to break down some of the nutritious components, but a light steam, 2-3 minutes, helps you to get a lot more nutrition out of your vegetables. Interestingly enough, cruciferous vegetables, which like arugula and cabbage and kale and cauliflower, so many of these greens that are really good for detox and for supporting the body's cleansing and healing mechanisms, they can pull iodine from the blood system in order to help them digest, which the thyroid gland needs iodine in order to function at its optimal health levels. So you don't want to be pulling from that. So that's another thing that cooking them offsets, is they no longer need to pull iodine from your system.
Wow.
There's all these little intricate.
Okay, so we have the grounding component in the evening. We have nutrition, very important. How about maybe some supplements? I know that there's certain adaptogens that are very good for relaxing the nervous system. I believe that evening rituals of winding down, I think it's extremely important. Like not having screens a couple hours before bedtime. But there's, it's good to actually have some herbs, herbal remedies. You're a herbalist, so we can dive into it a lot deeper. What could help people? Because I think so many of us resort to like taking NyQuil or something very powerful, like Benadryl, something that really knocks you out. But it's unnecessary. There's so many other things that can help you, and I think the way it works is, it may not be as powerful right away that particular night that you're taking it, but if you're doing it over an extended period of time, your nervous system just calms and relaxes, and you're able to, go to bed in a time that you're supposed to go to, and actually have a good quality of sleep. So, when people go to the store to get the supplements, what should they be looking into?
You bring up some really good points.
Yes, I do.
So I'm a big fan of supporting the body's innate healing response naturally. Anytime we're throwing things at the body, it's having to interpret, it's having to assess, it's having to assign, this is going to go here, this is going to go there. There's all these mechanisms involved. Basically, the underlying cause of most disease, in my opinion, is inflammation. And the more stuff we throw at the body, the more toxins, such as medications, which have to be filtered through the liver and kidneys, for example, and has a toxic effect on the body as part of whatever healing that it's doing. That's just more overload. That's asking more of the body to handle. And in the long run, it doesn't actually address underlying root symptoms or root causes. It masks the symptoms. So for something that's really, really acute and needs to be handled on the spot very quickly. Okay, heavier medications, there are times when that's indicated. But for the most part, it's much better for longevity, for quality of life, in the moment and in the future for somebody, to support their natural healing response in natural ways. So there are natural herbs and supplements. I think people have heard enough about like ginseng and ashwagandha and some of the mushrooms, and even simple things like vitamin C, magnesium, for example, to calm the nervous system and to promote healthy adrenal function, which promotes healthy thyroid function, which promotes less inflammation in the body, which equals brain health and longevity. We stay focused and sharp for longer periods of time, offset dementia, things like this.
It's fascinating how people are so focused on having energy throughout the day, and they think that process starts in the morning when you wake up. That okay, now I'm gonna pound some coffee and take some supplements for my brain so I can be focused. But that process starts the night before. You have to have a proper rest. You have to, and in order to have a proper rest, you have to have proper nutrition, proper evening rituals to wind down, so your body is actually, fully charging itself, and not like, let's say, if you had a late dinner and it spends the first 2 hours of your sleep just digesting food, and so you're taken away from that regeneration. So it all starts in the evening, and so many of us tend to skip that or even like sacrifice that because they think, oh, I need to squeeze in some more work in the evening, or maybe do some entertainment. That yes, it's fun, it numbs you, but it, you don't actually recuperate. So the evening before, that's when it all starts.
That makes me think of such an important component of all this, which is more on the emotional, spiritual side of things, and that's about self-love and self-care. There's something about packing as much as you can into the day and thinking that your value comes from what you do or how much you accomplish. And I don't think that's true. I think somebody's innate value comes from who they are and what they really exude to the world, how they lead by example, rather than, how many more reports they can squeeze out or any of these things. So it comes down to that, and the nightly routine, as well as a good night's sleep, as well as the morning routine. I mean, that's my most precious time in my life. And my recommendation for my patients and wish for people is to, might be a different time of day, but have that time of day be you time. And it doesn't have to be many, many hours, but prioritizing self-care, prioritizing good rest, good restoration, so that you can be at your maximum productivity during the day. There's a time to go inward, there's a time to go outward, and it's about understanding your biorhythms and how your body wants to work, and being in line with that, respecting it, honoring it, and supporting it, rather than fighting against it. And
yeah, like there's nothing wrong if your body needs 8 hours of sleep, and your work colleague brags about sleeping 5 to 6 hours and feeling great. Like, you don't need to compete with that. Your body needs what it needs, and so you'll be at your optimal performance when you provide that to your body.
Yes.
There seems to be this image of the more hours I work, the better, the more successful I am. But it's really not, because eventually it catches up with you, and then you have to take lots of time off to heal yourself. So it's just not worth it. And what you said about the morning rituals, very powerful. I think I talk about morning rituals on every single podcast because it's something that had a great impact on my life. It's something that I do. I've been doing that for the past 4 or 5 months now. Just every single morning I have my ritual, and it just puts me in a zone. I always start the day the same way, and because I don't turn on my phone, there's no distraction. So it always starts the same way. And then I'm able to face whatever challenges I have throughout the day. But it's so good to have that consistency. And I think, literally these days, you can open up any blog post or books. Everybody always talking about mornings and evenings. And so it's not a secret. The secret here is to do it consistently. It's not something that you can do for a couple of weeks and expect results right away. There may be some little small changes in your lifestyle, but the results come in when you do it on an ongoing basis. When you do it for a year or two, and then you realize, like, wow, I am a completely different person, completely different person than I was a year before. So there are no secrets. All this information is already available. There's been so many books written where people go and interview 100 most successful people in the world, and they all say the same thing. Yeah, meditation, yet not all of us meditate. Or maybe when we do meditate, we don't have the proper intention for that. Like, I know I've been meditating for a very long time, just with an expectation, okay, some answers will come in right now. Like, I'm putting in the work, I'm putting in my 15 minutes, I should get the insight now from the universe, and it's like, no, that's not how it works. You have to show up with just to be there, just to connect, to calm yourself, to be more present, not with expectations that a reward is coming soon. So I think setting intention for your morning practices is extremely, extremely important.
Intentions, and also, like you're alluding to, practicing non-attachment. So the practice of meditation has its roots in a lot of Buddhist philosophy, which has to do with non-attachment, liberating even the antidote, as they say in Tibetan Buddhism.
Non-attachment, I would love to expand more on that, because this is something that shows up in my life a lot, in all areas of life.
I'm hearing that as you're talking about the morning ritual, how you do it every day. And
yes. Yeah, I'm attached to doing it every day.
So the only thing that I might add as a suggestion is gentleness with yourself. If there is you fall off your wagon or don't do your ritual one day, awareness around that, just notice, oh, I didn't do it this day. And leaving it there. Not, I didn't do it this day, therefore.
It's done, it's not working.
Et cetera. And all the self-critical dialogue internally. Just simple observation. There's so much power in just observing and being aware what we have seen ourselves do. And like you were saying, I think that is, the most I get out of meditation is the awareness that comes without the judgment of, this is a good thing that I want for myself, or, oh my gosh, how could I?
Yeah, I think once you start observing yourself and you start watching your mind go on these tangents, mind takes me to wonderful places. It's just, there's always all this things that I hypothetical situations that I go on tangents, and I just really go out there, and I realize, wow, this takes away a lot of my energy, just letting my mind do whatever it wants to do. And then all of a sudden, I find myself in a bad mood, or angry at somebody, or, just experiencing these negative feelings based on something that didn't even happen. It wasn't even real. Like, most of us are scared of situations for years and years and years, and those situations never even happen. But we waste so much energy, so much, or we're just holding grudges against people, thinking like, oh, he did that or she did that on purpose, and that person's not even aware of any of that. So you're the one suffering, that person's not suffering, they're not even aware of what's going on, so it's like self-created suffering. So I think it's such a good practice to observe your mind, to see like where it's taking you throughout the day. And then once you see that, the first observation is that it's pretty scary. Like I was pretty frustrated with my mind for a long time, but now I'm able to befriend it and tell it, hey, let's work together. And as soon as I notice a negative pattern, I try to replace it with something more positive. Or I try to just do a little snap and just shut it off. So I don't spend the next 10 minutes thinking about somebody who cut me off in the car and about their life and all of those things. So unnecessary. So yeah, observing the mind is such a wonderful practice.
Well, I'm hearing you speak to the power of the mind.
Yes.
So again, another one of those cliche phrases and things that we've known for as long as we've been around as a human race. But the power of the mind, there's really something to that. What you were saying, the it'll carry you on a journey, on a story, and next thing you know, you find yourself in a certain posture, behaving a certain way, feeling a certain way.
Yeah.
And when we can get a little bit of observer going and a little bit of not detachment, but unattachment, and realize that what our mind is doing is not necessarily who we are, doesn't necessarily define us. But if we learn to work in harmony with it, we can use it to our advantage. And there's a whole new world that can be unlocked when somebody starts a meditation practice. And
I think that's where manifestation comes along as well, right? It's
you're touching upon some of this.
Like you attract. You know, a lot of people think that law of attraction is you attract what you want. You know, you attract what you are. So even though, let's say, you want financial success, you want more money, but if you live in this like scarcity mindset and you're always bargaining or complaining that things are expensive, or just that type of mindset, you may be writing in your journal how much money you want to make that year, but if all day you spend in this scarcity mindset, that's what you attract. And so the law of attraction, it really has to do with how you feel at the moment. And I have definitely experienced it on both ends, where I would be very stuck in a very negative pattern, and it would be so scary because it was that loop where then I would start attracting negative things, and I was like, oh my God, how do I get out of it? And the trick is to focus on something that really raises your vibration. So just it's a good practice to journal, let's say, list 5 or 6 activities that you can do throughout the day that raise your vibration. Let's say walking your dog raises your vibration. Maybe doing something like writing this book that you've been planning to write. So you write a chapter a day. Maybe it's singing. Maybe it's exercising. Whatever it is, so you got to have your list and then follow this list. Like when you get into this like the funk zone, when everything is just falling apart, you have to break the pattern. How you break it is you raise your vibration. So you just do all of these activities, and all of a sudden you feel a lot better, and better ideas come to you. The solutions to the problems that before were like burying you alive, now all of a sudden like, oh my God, how did I not notice this solution before? Now it's easy solved. I didn't even have to worry about it anymore. So that's so powerful to have that in your pocket, to figure out how to get out of that closed loop and raise your vibration.
So I would agree with you, and I would say that there's also a lot of richness in life available to us. If there's more kind of depth and understanding of some of the patterns, some of the perhaps negative loops and patterns that we've fallen into. What I like to do and what I like to recommend is that once some of that vibration has been raised, some of that momentum has been sort of stirred and energized, not to hesitate from exploring a little bit some of the underlying and root causes. And the reason I bring this up is because there's something to, I'm going to use some taboo words here, I apologize, but I have to say it. There's something about spiritual escapism, cognitive bypassing, emotional bypassing or escapism that it doesn't quite touch on the root of our sorrow or wounding in a way that actually moves us forward on a more permanent basis. So the reason I mention that is because there's a real need to have a little bit more resilience, perhaps, or willingness to explore deeper, to dive a little bit deeper, not to stay down there, but to touch on something that may otherwise be really scary or uncomfortable, because ultimately there's gold down there. There's this, surface layer of shame and anger and fear, perhaps, all the sharks swimming around saying, don't go down there, it's scary, it's scary. And once you move through and beyond those scary feelings and layers, what's buried beneath is your gold, is some pieces of us that we perhaps, unconsciously or unwittingly gave away, ways we gave away our power or picked up patterns of self-sabotage. Procrastination is my favorite one.
Yes.
And the more I discover and the more I find people work with uncovering and kind of building up the strength to dive beyond the superficial layer of the fears that try and keep us away from what's underneath. The gold that's recovered is ours forever. And it's no longer about having to do something every single day exactly the same way. And I'm not talking about your morning routine. I think that's fabulous, actually. I do the same. But I mean in terms of the incredible amount of work that's required to keep telling your mind to do this and not this. Rather, there's kind of a deeper healing effect that happens so that you simply don't fall back into those old patterns. It's just not part of you anymore.
Wow, that's pretty much a recipe for healing yourself. I like that. That's so, and it could be scary following that path. I have recently stumbled, because I was going deep into the pain deep inside of me, and it's something just started releasing, which is a good thing. But the scary part of it is now that it's on the surface, it just causes so much anxiety. There's something new that I haven't experienced before. I realize that it's coming out, so it's a good thing. But that process itself, it could be very scary. And to me, I am very lucky that I have teachers and different healers around me at all times that I could ask them what's happening and what do I do. Because the first reaction is I need to numb this. I need to somehow numb this anxiety or this sensation that I'm not familiar with, because it's sometimes it seems like I'm losing my mind.
Yeah, it can get overwhelming and intolerable, and it's so important to have people by our sides, healers, guides. It's like scuba diving. You don't go without a buddy.
Yeah.
You don't go do a deep dive without somebody holding the oxygen tank or the cord, up there in the boat. That somebody you're connected to who's going to be able to pull you back and
somebody who's already been there.
Yeah.
Like they've done this process. They know exactly what you're feeling in that moment, and so they can guide you out of it, and into your self transformation and your healing.
Out of it or through it.
There we go. Through it, exactly. Okay, so I would like to just keep diving deeper and deeper and deeper, because I think we're uncovering something that's very powerful. That's it's our upbringing, how people were raised, how maybe they have fallen into certain limiting beliefs, certain behaviors that are blocking them from being their optimum selves, right? So how do you help your patients uncover some of their limiting beliefs or patterns that block them?
So, that's a really good question. I like to meet people where they're at. And we're all in a different place on our journey. But I think that I have enough evidence to say with a fair amount of certainty that in one way or another, all of us are trying to be more authentic or moving toward a more authentic way of being and with ourselves and in the world. And the soul evolution, there's just so much that we've already come in with that wants to become known, wants to become conscious, wants to become part of us. That there's different ways to connect with that part of us along the journey. So often, I'll answer it like this. When I understand what level somebody's at and what they're trying to accomplish. I can better understand what type of modality or set of modalities will help that person. For example, if somebody's really kinetic, kinesthetic, then maybe some more body therapy or yogic type movement therapy would be more appropriate. Somebody who's really, really on a subtle kind of energy or emotional level, acupuncture is a wonderful way to help really open up some blocks and bring more of you into your body, for example, or into the world. With some people, there's, I don't do this, but I think hypnotherapy is a wonderful modality. Because that's a direct line of access to the unconscious and to the subconscious, more so. The unconscious is readily or better accessed by like psychoanalysis, Jungian psychoanalysis. I love. You get to analyze dreams and and read the symbols and see what they're trying to say. And these can be some really deep and fascinating ways to really explore the self.
Yeah. I think I've tried so much. The only thing I haven't tried is the hypnosis, because I'm kind of still a little bit hesitant giving the access to my mind to somebody, But I have certainly tried so many, and because I'm known for having a network of different healers, now everybody always reaches out to me and says, "Oh, did you hear about this person?" And then I'm like, oh, "Okay, I have to go see." And so I've worked with so many different energy healers and astrologers, numerologists, so many different healers. I mean, that's how we met, because a friend of ours said, "You have to see Karina. She's a true healer." And, and I really appreciate that you have so many modalities that you use to work with your patients. How did you learn them? How was your journey? How did this all start for you?
It's funny. Every time I'm asked that question, something different or new pops into my head. And perhaps it's our shared heritage, but I'm reminded of growing up in Europe and having all these little animals show up everywhere that had, I don't know, an injured wing or a bat with a broken leg or a frog or little, baby birds that had been abandoned or whatever. And as a kid, I was always keen to try and help and rescue them. And of course, a lot of times I messed up and didn't help them at all. But sometimes I was able to. And I always had an innate curiosity about, why are these, guys showing up here and what can I do? And at some point in my life, early on, it was a cue or a clue to me that there was a part of me that was wounded and was looking for some help and healing and rescue. And when I started doing my deep dives, I found that one thing didn't do it. I'm a complex human being, as most of us are, and require a multi-pronged approach. I needed something on the level of the body, the level of the mind, the level of the spirit, the level of the emotion. And I became really interested in different modalities. I started reading, books on, Freud's interpretation of dreams and the Eastern philosophy, Buddhist scriptures, and all these things. And for many, many years, I studied psychology and human consciousness and yoga and medicine. I was always fascinated by it because of the little injuries that came to my doorstep. And it just became really clear to me that can I share a little?
Of course, you can share anything on this podcast. Yes.
Okay. When I was traveling around and sort of on my own kind of seeking vision quest, I knew I wasn't doing quite what I needed to do with my life. I wasn't quite living my purpose. I found myself meditating on top of Cathedral Rock in Sedona, Arizona,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how long I was floating around in this meditative state, but all of a sudden, eventually, I see this black onyx table and a single acupuncture needle falling onto it in slow motion. And I had this moment of incredible clarity and certainty that I've never, ever had before in my life. And that was the missing piece. So integrative medicine was sort of the message that came through that visual and that feeling awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And as I started to study, I studied in China, in Japan. I had already been doing yoga for well over a decade at that point, and teaching it and practicing as a counselor, and Reiki, energy healing, that was part of my yogic journey too. And so incorporating medicine, Chinese medicine, Western medicine, functional medicine, that just kind of rounded out the picture and got me to
And here we are.
Here we are today.
Wow, it always fascinates me, the journey that people take, because it's you really have to listen to your heart, to your instincts. It's not just expression, listen to your heart. No, like, it actually guides you to places. And then when you get there, you feel connected. Like, you feel like, wow, it's not making any sense, but it feels like this is it. This is where I need to be, or this is what I need to be doing.
Trust.
Exactly. You start trusting, and then you fall into this vortex that just like takes you, just launches you, and things happen, beautiful things happen, because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think so many people out there, especially these days, because there's so many things you can do. There's, the traditional professions are slowly, falling apart, or maybe, there's so many new ones that people they don't even have to go to college anymore. They can just do like an online course, and all of a sudden they can start their own company and just become super successful. It's like, this is the time, we live in the time where everything is possible, anything is possible, and you could be who you want to be. But in order to do that, you kind of have to take the leap of faith. You have to follow your instincts, and trust in yourself, trust in those instincts, and do something that perhaps may seem bizarre to your peers or your family. They'll be like, "What are you doing, man? Like, this is so out of the blue. Nobody in your family has done that. Why don't you do something that we're all doing?" So it's really cool to be so adventurous, and then you fall into your purpose, and here you are. You're healing thousands of lives. And for many, many more years to come, you'll be doing more and more and more, and just because you actually trusted that instinct to follow that.
It's interesting that you call it an instinct, because it did come from within. I mean, that's look at the word instinct, instinct, and it's innate to us.
Yes,
and something we're just like that called to do. And a lot of times I hear people attribute this to divine intervention, or the spirit speaking to me or through me. And my experience has been that this spirit is internal. Universe is internal. Divinity is internal, and therefore not at all separate from instinct. And this is another way we were talking about balance and connection earlier. This is another way that the spiritual and the physical and the emotional are connected and integrated and one. That this did arise from within, and
that's why you need silence sometimes.
Because to listen to that voice.
Because that's the point of meditation, is to have some silence, so you can actually give a chance to this internal intervention to actually happen. Otherwise, if you're constantly stimulating yourself with the news and one book after the next, and listening to podcasts after next, listen to Think Clever podcast, but the other ones,
this one.
Yes, only this one. But yes, like, so I feel so overwhelmed sometimes, because I feel like I'm behind, and especially people reach out to me like, "Oh, have you read this?" or "This is the best thing, you got to check this out." And eventually I have to learn to say no, and to realize that, yes, this person may be the next best thing because he has figured it out, but he did his own work to figure it out, and I need to do mine. And until I actually start doing it, then I'm just going to be a constant chaser of the next best thing, if somebody figured out their own life.
I think we have to go through a period of experimenting and copying and finding role models and trying what they're teaching. And that's the process of discovery. That's the path of discovery.
Yeah.
And then, like you say, one day it's a big yes. It's a big internal yes. And like your own authentic voice comes through. And after all, we are all a unique expression of a human being, I could say more spiritual talk, but it's up to every person to find their puzzle piece and to express their life in the unique way that they are here to express their life and to contribute.
Self-expression. That's the chapter that I'm working on now in my life, because I realized I have accumulated so much, but I kept it all inside. I wasn't really expressing it. I wasn't sharing it with anybody. And so I didn't really contribute anything to the world. I just kept it all to myself. And now I'm in this chapter of expressing myself and sharing, and all of a sudden all these amazing things are happening. I'm attracting people, I'm connecting with people, and we're all now sharing. We're all telling our stories, and I'm studying closely with Bo Eason. He's a coach for public speaking, and for him, he's so about public speaking. He says when you're expressing yourself, your body actually starts getting younger. You start looking better because you are all of a sudden you're activated, like you're this active piece in the universe, like falling into your because if you're on stage sharing something, most likely you've done the work, you went on the journey to discover something, and then you're sharing this. So this means that the picture is complete. It's not that you're still walking the journey, still looking for something. It means that you found something and you figured out a way to share it and have an impact on other people's lives. So that means that you're this active component in this play of life.
Well, hopefully still walking as well.
Yes, exactly. Still walking and still sharing because people need to hear new stuff. So yes, self-expression. I think that's probably, in a healing world, that's extreme. It's part of the healing. If it's expressing yourself, that actually brings me to this awesome topic that I wanted to discuss. This kind of came up this morning, and trapped emotions and feelings. I think that's part of the disease, that eventually can transform into disease and again, that's not expressing it. When you're keeping something inside for so long, whether it's a grudge against somebody or whether you're not speaking up for yourself, you just keep it all inside and you think that it's all right, but that energy is there and it's just dwelling there and more and more and more. That's when people eventually snap, because there's no more stuff that you can keep. There's no more space, so it's extremely important to go through the process of releasing that. So maybe we could touch up on a couple of techniques that people can do to release those trapped emotions, because we all have them, and and there's a reason why people are so crazy outside these days, like so much road rage and all these things are happening because people are not releasing properly. I did my releasing this morning. I took a little plastic baseball bat and I put a pillow and a blanket on the pillow so it's not loud. I turned on some music and I did some releasing and I felt great. It wasn't like I'm a bad person, but it was something that I had on my mind and it kept eating me from inside for many, many days. And I realized, okay, no more. It got to go.
So the first thing, and I can't stress this enough, letting go of shame around emotions, even the emotion of shame. There's so much in our lives that we can be ashamed of. And then the shame of the shame is sure to keep it locked up inside. And it's like a prisoner. It's going to, like you said, go crazy and wreak havoc internally, and that's eventually going to manifest into external actions that can be very destructive.
Yes.
We are human. Therefore, we have all the emotions. We can be angry, afraid, sad, joyful. We can be ashamed, and all the secondary emotions that stem from those core ones. So first is to acknowledge that this is normal and healthy and human. And if you're not a human being, you're probably not listening to this podcast. And if you are, then you are someone who has these emotions somewhere in you. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we judge ourselves to be feeling them appropriately or inappropriately, and that's a big cause of shame. Oh, I shouldn't be angry about that. I shouldn't be afraid of that. I was
Guilty
told that I'm a wimp. Yes. Yeah. It's the fine line between guilt and shame. It's like, oh, I'm guilty of that. I take accountability and responsibility. I did contribute to that. Versus shame. Oh my gosh, I don't have a right to exist. I'm a terrible person because I did this. That's a little different. Mm-hmm. That's a little bit more of a block. So acknowledging that your emotional reaction is happening for a reason. Maybe you don't know it yet, but it's happening for a good reason. It may be protective. It may be informational. It may just be an appropriate response and you don't think it's appropriate because of other types of conditioning. Mm-hmm. So first having that understanding as a basic. And then creative ways of the expression of emotion and metered ways of expressing emotion, not too much, not too little. These are all things that are very easy to say.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's like, what do I do when I'm angry and, like I'm in this front of this person, but I shouldn't be reacting inappropriately, right?
I have never heard of anybody getting hurt from feeling their emotion and expressing it in a healthy way. I have heard of a lot of people getting very hurt from repressing their emotion to the point where it squirts out sideways or gets expressed in a way that's not healthy and not balanced. Mm-hmm. So what you mentioned this morning, like taking a bataka bat to a couch pillow with some loud music on, great. Guttural sounds, go out into the middle of the woods or onto the beach where the ocean's nice and loud and just release through your voice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very powerful. Or just in a pillow.
In a pillow.
If you don't have an opportunity to take a road trip, just take a big pillow and just yell.
That's right. We do want to make this accessible to listeners at home.
Exactly. Like they could be driving right now in the car and they can just start yelling real quick,
Absolutely. Just keep your eyes open and make sure you're not merging at the time.
Don't hit the accelerator pedal, while you're yelling.
Yeah. Have to be mindful and careful. And tears. Both men and women are plagued by having to contain their tears, and that's just unnecessary, to say the least. Tears are one of the most healing parts of our bodies and our emotions.
Journaling
is a wonderful way. Uncensored journaling. That's the key.
Yeah, just let it flow.
Don't worry about the grammar. Don't worry about how crazy you sound in that moment. Yeah. It needs to be expressed, and that's a safe way of expressing it because you can then burn the page or crumple it up and throw it away.
Yeah, I like either burning it or just like ripping it into small little pieces because it's a process, so you kind of see the emotions that you've put into those words, you see them being vanishing into a fire or you're ripping them apart. It's psychological. This stuff really matters, It like for let's say, I don't know, somebody living a conservative lifestyle, they'll be like, oh really, you want me to write my emotions and then burn it? Like what kind of witchcraft is that? But for your mind, it works. This is the process that works for your subconscious mind, and you can either be skeptical and not do it and then figure out, oh, well, what do I do with my emotions? Or you can give it a shot. It may seem silly, but give it a shot and see how better you feel.
That kind of creative symbolic self-expression is, first of all, well-researched, the positive effects on the psyche, as well as the positive effects of being able to express that pent-up emotion. There's something in Chinese medicine which is called the latency vessel, and it's a component. It has a physiological component, but it's more on a subtle energy level. And it's basically that of us which contains, which holds on, which keeps things sort of buried under the proverbial rug. And what happens over the course of one's lifetime is that rug gets a little bit weaker. It can't hold quite as much or as strong, or just the contents that are underneath it overwhelm it so that you open a window and then the wind blows and the rug gets uncovered and suddenly all of that stuff that's been lying dormant underneath gets stirred. So there's wonderful ways with techniques like EFT, emotional freedom technique, the tapping on
Yes.
different points, which has a lot to do with acupuncture.
I am writing this one down.
And acupuncture itself, which
Perfect.
is working with the meridian system. And even something like TRE, trauma release exercises. I mean, this is why exercise works so well to de-stress people. We're literally releasing energy. We're releasing tension.
Yeah.
Um,
And having, again, proper intention for
Yes.
whatever you're doing. So if you're bashing with a baseball bat, into the pillow, but you're thinking about your to-do list for the day, not working.
no.
You have to pull up those emotions. You have to pull up the person that you're angry with, or maybe the situation that you're angry at. Pull it up on the surface and then bash it out so it just releases. So setting that intention for any of these practices.
Yes. And then the practice of that tends to create a temporary void, because once you've released something, there's a space there now. And what tends to happen when it's not an intentional practice, or it's not facilitated properly, that void gets filled up with our routine go-to default addictions, behaviors, and just the same kind of stuff that was in it in the first place. So there's a really strong need to have awareness around, first of all, the sense of when that void appears, when something has been released, and what are you going to fill it up with. So there's various techniques, using emotions, using visualizations, color, different things.
Nice.
that you can utilize to refill and get more pieces of you back in there, versus other stuff that's just more of a placeholder rather than something that can be authentically integrated. into
This
your
is
being.
so. It's such a fascinating world of healing. There's so many things, and they're all there for you to be a better human being, so you can achieve more and do more in life. As we're wrapping up here, what would be the call to action that you would like to inspire listeners to do something, to learn something about themselves or change something in their life? Like, what's something that you would like them to walk away with?
A call to action.
Could be few. No need to just focus on one.
I mean, my wish, if I had a wish for anybody listening, it would be to honor your intuition, honor that voice within, and what it's calling you to do, and go into the fear. Like, if there's some kind of piece of inspiration that wants to come forward, and there's an immediate yes, but. We all know the yes, but moment.
Yep.
Pay particular attention to that and give it some attention, because that's a component. That's part of one of our inner people, one of our internal structures that deserves a voice. It doesn't mean it has the ultimate decision, but it deserves a voice, and to explore that resistance with a trusted friend or a trusted supporter, guide, or provider, healer of some
have some
kind.
guides around you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
To help interpret, process, and glean the most clear lesson and message
Wonderful.
from whatever's coming up inside.
Thank you, Karina. Where could people find you? How can they connect with you?
I'm online at www.kaiwellness.com, and I work out of I'm on the corner of Brentwood, Los Angeles, Santa Monica.
Okay.
That's my office.
Your wellness center is called Kai Wellness.
It's Kai Wellness.
Okay.
And I do remote sessions as well.
Awesome.
And all of this can be found on the website. That's probably the easiest way.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. This has been a really inspiring conversation. We've touched on so many topics and went really deep as well, which, I love going deep. And I'm so happy to have you here and expand on this. I look forward to our next meeting.
Me too. Thank you so much. This has been such a treat.
Thank you, Karina.
Thank you, Stas.